I'm going to proof the yeast right now by warming up some milk, and it doesn't want to be hot. You want it to be between about 110 and 115 degrees, or baby bottle warm. And so I'm going to just put it in the microwave for a few seconds. Okay, I've heated this in the microwave for nearly 30 seconds. Let's see what the temperature is. Well, it's just about right. You don't want it too hot or it will kill the yeast. So right now it says 94. That's close enough. I'm going to put in the powdered yeast and a half a teaspoon of sugar. And I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of sugar. This is food for the yeast. Stir it till the yeast dissolves. And I just used 1 packet of yeast. I used 1 packet of yeast. Now there's 2 kinds. There's active dry yeast, which is a little slower than the instant or rapid rise type. Either one will work. I'm measuring out 4 cups of flour. I am using an organic milled flour that's locally sourced, and it is a little more closely related to a whole wheat flour, but it is still considered an all-purpose flour that's appropriate for baking. So we've got to do this one and another one to make 4 cups. You might need more flour, so don't put away your flour yet. So now I'm adding the other 2 cups to make a total of 4 cups. I used a little bit of sugar to put in with the yeast, and we have to wait about 10 or 15 minutes to see if it bubbles up, which is called proofing the yeast. So I'm going to get 50 grams of sugar. This is unbleached sugar. Now I'm just going to add the sugar to the flour. Now we're going to put in 1½ teaspoons of salt. A lot of recipes for overnight dinner rolls using yeast often call for shortening, but this particular recipe I liked because it uses butter, and everyone knows butter is better. So we're going to add 6 tablespoons of a soft butter to the mixture. Now we are actually going to mix all this by hand. I'm going to add 2 large eggs to my dough mixture. And these are eggs from my very own backyard chickens. Okay, I'm just going to beat these eggs lightly. Okay, now I'm going to add the 2 beaten eggs. And I'm going to mix it all together. If you have a KitchenAid with a dough hook, you can do it that way. But today we're just going to do it by hand so you can see that it can be done without special equipment. I'm using a Finnish dough whisk, and this makes it easier to mix the dough, but you can just get your hands in there and mix it that way as well. I'm making a little well, and I'm just going to pour the yeast in. I could have added the yeast much earlier, but this makes it a little easier to add the liquids like this. Now I'm just going to continue to mix everything together and form a soft, pliable dough. This is making a very wet dough right now, so I'm going to just sprinkle in a handful or 2 of flour. But we're going to let it sit for a while after this and let it rise, and during that time the flour will absorb more of the water. I'm going to include that bit of flour. I'm going to sprinkle some flour out on the surface here And I'm going to turn the dough out onto the floured surface and knead it. I'm turning out the dough onto the floured surface where I can knead it. I'm going to knead this dough for about 10 minutes until I get a smooth, elastic dough. You'll notice the dough is still rather shaggy and very wet. So I'm going to continue to add little bits of flour and kneading it until it becomes smooth and elastic and it won't be such a mess. You can see that the dough is starting to look different. It's looking smoother, it's behaving itself a little better. It's still a little shaggy, but we're getting there. All right, I've been kneading this dough for about 10 minutes. It's showing a lot of improvement in its elasticity and smoothness. It's not as rough as it was before. It still needs a little work, but we're going to let it rest in a lightly oiled bowl for about an hour, and then we'll be ready to shape buns with it. Okay, so we're going to cover it with some plastic, and I'm going to cover it with one more thing to keep it warm. It's this very cute cover, but you can even use a shower cap. And we're just going to leave it on the counter for about an hour, hour and a half, and I'll see that it rises. And then we're going to shape it into buns. Look at that. Okay, now what we're going to do is divide this into anywhere between 8 and 12 buns. So we're going to take my bench knife and cut it into half. And quarters. Now I'm going to separate these out. To shape them into balls, I'm just going to fold the edges over like this, gathering it in the underneath. And I'm going to take it and just sort of scoot it around like this. I'm tucking it in with the sides of my hand. And then I'm going to get a little tension on the surface by pulling it forward. And that will ensure that we'll have a nice even surface that will brown readily. Okay, here are the buns that have been in the refrigerator overnight, doing a very slow rise, and they are ready to go in the oven as soon as we put an egg wash on. Put a little egg wash on here, and that will make the buns look more golden when they bake. So we're going to bake them at 375, I think. Yes. When they come out of the oven, we will brush them again, but with butter, some melted butter. Okay, and you can sprinkle seeds on top, or you can put poppy seeds, any kind of seed you like. These will be more like a pull-apart bun, because they're right next to each other. They're all ready now to go in the oven at 375 for about 20 minutes. And you want to put them kind of in the middle, and we'll keep an eye on them. Okay, the rolls look pretty done. Nice and golden. We got a puffer up there, and that one's even browner. I put them in a preheated oven, so that may have cut a few minutes off the total cooking time. And I want to show you, look at the sides here. You can see them being nice and brown. The hardest part is to let them cool down before you eat them. Otherwise, they're not quite finished baking. Part of the process is letting, in the cooling process, it's sort of like when you take a steak out of the pan or barbecue pit, you need to let the meat rest a while. So you're going to let these rest and cool. Yum!